The other day, I was watching my wife feverishly pushing buttons on her cell phone, and I finally asked her, "What are you doing?" And she replied, "I'm clearing my calendar." So, what do you mean you're clearing your calendar? And she said, "I had all of these things scheduled on my calendar, and none of them are happening anymore." And I thought, man, isn't that the truth these days? Um, we've had a lot of things on our calendar scheduled, at least, haven't we? And we had a wedding scheduled during this time. Uh, Many of you have had graduations scheduled. Some of you have had promotions scheduled. Certainly birthdays. We have a couple coming up in our family. Uh, Celebrations of all kinds, gatherings of all kinds. They were there on the calendar, but they no longer exist, at least not the way that we originally thought. And as I was thinking about that and the changes that have occurred in our lives over the past couple of weeks, month or so, um, that those events, those things that we had planned, will never be exactly what we thought they would be. And I was thinking, we really need to not forget to mourn during this time. There's a real loss that exists when we've waited for years for things to happen, when we've wanted things to go a certain way, when we've planned for weddings, when, you know, young men and women have gone to school for years and they're ready to celebrate their high school graduation or their college graduation or even upper education. And this day comes and it's not anything like they had anticipated. We need to remember not to forget to mourn, to grieve. Jesus taught us how to grieve when he faced losses in his life. He lost friends, he lost loyalties, he lost loved ones, and ultimately he lost his life. And in particular, I wanted to share with you briefly about one of the losses that Jesus experienced. It was a journey that he went through in a loss of a friend and a loved one named Lazarus. Lazarus was the brother of Martha and Mary, who were all good friends and loved ones of Jesus. Well, Lazarus had gotten very sick, and as you can imagine, Martha and Mary were really worried and anxious. And so they called for Jesus to come. Jesus did come, and as he approached their town, Martha came out to meet him, explaining that Lazarus had actually already died. And in fact, by the time Jesus arrived, he'd been dead already 4 days. Jesus assured Martha that everything was going to be okay. So Martha went back to her home and got Mary, her sister, to come to where Jesus was. So they both went out to meet Jesus now. And Jesus met with them. So if you get the picture here, you have Lazarus, their brother, who had been dead for 4 days, wrapped in grave clothes now, lying in a tomb. And you have Martha and Mary coming out to meet Jesus to hear his words of comfort. And what does Jesus do? Well, Scripture tells us Jesus wept. In the middle of a journey to heal and make whole, before Jesus goes to perform one of the greatest miracles of all time, he wept. In that moment, you see, Jesus recognized and experienced, along with Martha and Mary, the loss. Loss for himself, loss for Mary, loss for Martha, loss for those he loved. He didn't rush ahead of this opportunity to grieve and to mourn. He joined in grieving. He wept. And then he went on and resurrected Lazarus, made new life from death. Well, I want to encourage you as you face the realities of adjusted calendars, of long awaited events that will never happen, or at least won't happen as you had planned. As you consider the heart holes created because potential joy has been hijacked by this crazy virus. And as you try to capture as much as possible the intent of celebrations from these newly mandated spaces and places, don't forget to take time to grieve, to mourn, to weep what you've lost. For I believe out of that mourning and grief, God will bring new life. Bless you and have a great week.